Welcome to the Content Strategy Insights podcast, where accomplished content strategy experts share their wisdom with our friends in the content community. We talk with professionals who work across the span of content strategy, from small businesses to big enterprises, from content design to content marketing, from solo consultancies to huge agencies. Our mission is to democratize content strategy, to make its principles and practices accessible to everyone. And now, here's your host, Larry Swanson.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode number 37 of the Content Strategy Insights podcast. Really delighted today to have with us Kronda Adair. Kronda is a digital marketer and strategist down in Portland, Oregon. She runs her own small agency down there, and she does a lot of other interesting things as well. So I'll let Kronda tell you a little bit more about herself.
All right. Thanks, Larry. So January is actually my 6th anniversary of being in business, and I started out as a developer and just making WordPress sites for people. And then as the years went on, I've kind of evolved over time into different things as I saw, that just making websites wasn't really helping people as much as I wanted. So then I started studying marketing and getting into digital marketing and going in that direction. And so I feel like I just keep swimming upstream, towards the root problem, because even with digital marketing, I found that just creating websites for people, they still have issues with how to actually communicate with their audience once the website's actually launched. And so that's why I created the Content Bootcamp, which I'm sure we'll talk more about.
Yeah, tell me more about that, because that's, I know, well, I'll tell people how we met really briefly. I met at a couple of WordCamps over the last few years. And when we were talking last time, you talked about this stealth content strategy approach that you have. Is the Content Bootcamp related to that?
It's kind of an evolution of that. So the stealth part of it, and I think you were the first person I actually said that phrase to, but it's pretty accurate. And so what I would find is when I would do websites for people, I would go through a process of discovery, and then prototyping, and then actually building and design and things like that. And during discovery, I would have people ask do you need me to go away and write my content? And I say, no, you're actually writing your content now. We're actually talking through. People are very passionate when they talk about their business to someone one-on-one or maybe in a small group. And I find it's a lot easier to pull the information that I need out of them that way than to sit them down in front of a blank page where they usually freeze up and we don't get as much good stuff.
Right. So you're almost like a content coach in that sense as you start working with people, because they probably come to you thinking, oh, I need a website. And you're like, no, you need a place to put content. Because that's how it works.
Because that's what a website is, exactly.
Yeah.
And so Content Bootcamp is, it's kind of the next evolution of that, where it really is focused on the coaching and teaching people how to communicate with their market online. Because a lot of people are really good one-on-one, or they can go and give a presentation. But when it comes to actually creating content digitally, they struggle a lot. And so being able to, identify that you have a good offer, right? Make sure that you're solving a valuable problem that people actually need solved, identifying the right audience that needs that problem solved, and then learning what's the messaging. How do I talk about what I do in a way that's going to draw people in and that's going to bring new clients in?
Right. That's like a good small business content messaging architecture strategy you just talked about. One thing that a lot of smaller businesses struggle with is that research part of it, really knowing they have a sense, like you said, they've all had conversations with their folks already and they have a feel for their audience. But how much do you help them focus and articulate who they're talking to?
I think the conversation is some of the best research that you can do. And there are definitely other ways to do it that you can layer on top of that. But I learn more about my market just from having conversations with them and asking them questions about, where are you struggling? What's going on? And a lot of mindset and limiting belief issues will come out that I'll realize, I have to address this first before people can even work with me, because a lot of people have blocks around, even being able to achieve the things that they want to achieve. So I think just going out and talking to people, I had a client who left one of our meetings and she was on her way to a festival to go like take out her cell phone and interview people on video about like, how do you use social media? Because that was her thing. And said, wow, talking to people, what a radical idea.
Nice. Well, yeah, so you reminded me there that this, a quick backstory here. I talked to a lot of different people in this podcast. I talked to a lot of people like you, like small business, people who are working with small business owners in various types of content things. But I also talk a lot with like bigger, like enterprise places who are doing either content marketing or bigger, more genuinely strategic content strategy stuff. But one of the things that comes up, like, you're helping me identify one of the dynamics that I see a lot, which is for the small business, it's often like that kind of thing that you're talking about, conversations. You're not going to have the budget to hire a UX researcher or a customer researcher to go out and talk to people. And you don't even need to because you're already talking to them. It's just a translation thing from day-to-day speak into this digital media speak. Is that accurate in terms of how you work with your folks? Or?
Yeah, and I think getting away from the idea that you have to speak in a different way in person than you do online. I mean, there's a little bit of like SEO and things like that to consider, but by and large, I try to get people away from the idea of, media speak or social media speak, because it's really just you, like learning to present yourself authentically, if I can use sort of a probably overused buzzword, but to do that online in a way that when people show up for strategy sessions with me, I'll often hear like, I feel like I know you because I've been watching your videos for 2 hours, or because I've been getting your emails for a year. Like they know what they're going to get. And so that's really what I'm trying to teach people, is how to put themselves out there in that way.
Right. And I think you're exactly right that it's that conversational basis of this, it's going to help them establish their authenticity. But there are some issues with translating that day-to-day conversational stuff into a digital medium. Are there any like jump-starting kind of tricks you have for helping people actually get writing or blogging or podcasting or whatever kind of content it is they're creating?
My main trick for that is a loving but gentle kick in the butt. I think the reason that people get stuck on this is because they think they need one more course or one more strategy or one more tactic. And there's an analogy that has been popping up for me a lot, because I talked to a guy recently who was a dating coach. And that always makes me think of like the guy hiring a dating coach and asking, okay, what's the pickup lines that are going to, fix my dating problem? Or what are the strategies and what are the tips? And what's actually true is that you have to become a person worth dating, right? And so in marketing, like the version of that is, okay, give me the templates, give me the cheat sheets, give me the strategies and the tactics. Well, actually, you have to become a person worth following. You have to become a person of value. You have to become a leader in your space. And you have to do that digitally so that you can scale it, because it's not scalable to just go to networking meetings forever. And so that's kind of what I'm getting at, and really focusing on core principles and not so much on trying to teach people a bunch of stuff. Just teach them the right stuff and then getting them to go out and do it, because that's the hard part. This stuff is experiential and you have to just start. You can't, you can't watch a video about how to tie your shoes and know how to tie your shoes. You have to do it.
Exactly. And that, and sometimes you said that, like a kick in the butt, I think is the term you used, but how does that manifest in terms of like, if somebody's they're stuck in either like a perfectionism trap or like that petrified fear thing, whatever it is. Are there like little tactical things that you do to help people like get to what you were just talking about? Because all those things you said make perfect sense, that you want to be out there. Like, how do you get them to actually get that on, in an email newsletter or on the website or wherever?
Yeah, well, that's the trick. So a couple of things. One is I really focus on helping them define why it is whatever goal they have is important, because your reason for doing what you're doing has to be bigger than the fear of doing it. So that's one key to keep internally motivated. And the other thing is just sort of contextualizing it in a science-based way. Like, our brains are still kind of prehistoric in some ways. Your lizard brain is still like trying to keep you safe from saber-toothed tigers. And so there's a part of your brain that is terrified to rock the boat because we need the tribe to survive. And it's terrified of like little things because that shadow might be a saber-toothed tiger. So kind of understanding that and realizing that and conceptualizing that, I think helps some people to realize like, oh, okay, this is just my brain trying to sabotage me. Let me go and do what I need to do. And as you go through that process, you start to normalize and be able to push through. And that's a skill. Being able to push through that fear is a skill. And again, you just have to start doing it and build up that muscle.
Yep. You're reminding me of a guy here in Seattle, Scott Birkin, actually a friend of mine. He wrote a book called Confessions of a Public Speaker. And he talked about how the fear of public speaking is completely rational, because the last time in human history that 200 pairs of eyes were trained upon you, you were probably about to be killed or something. So it makes sense. Right. And you just need tricks to get by that. And
exactly.
You're doing the same thing for digital presence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Kronda, I want to go back. When we first met, I met you down at, first time we had a conversation, it was down at bootcamp Portland a couple of years ago. And it was one of those birds of a feather lunch things. And it was sort of, we at some point in it got talking about trading resources. And you immediately struck me as like, oh my God, she knows everything and has like 2 or 3 good resources for each topic that has come up. Tell me about that. Like, how did you get that? I think a lot of people would like to be that way, and we all kind of have bookmarked things and things like that. But you were so focused and had the exact right resource for every question that came up from people there. Tell me a little bit about your kind of how that came to be.
Yeah, so one thing I say a lot, especially when I do presentations, is I'll play a game with people where I say, if you can ask me a question that I don't have a link for, then I'll offer some sort of prize. It's just one of my life missions is to have a link, to answer the things that I get asked most often. And so I've just been very intentional about collecting those. And if you want to get super nerdy about it, I use Text Expander. And so if it's links, then I'll have shortcuts that will expand into the link for the article or the book or whatever it is I need. So that's how I can come up with those so quickly. But content is assets. And so I've just been like collecting assets over the years, and so that I can have them when I need them and share them.
Right. The other thing that struck me in that conversation and that interaction was that you're kind of a process nerd too, that you not only have lots of resources at your disposal, but you have really effective mechanisms for making stuff get done. Tell me a little bit about that.
So when I really, really started nerding out on processes was when the second time I read the book, Work the System by Sam Carpenter. It really got into me, and I started proselytizing, and I would talk to business owners and say, have you accepted documentation and process as your personal savior? Because especially service-based business owners, which is primarily who I work with, like we're always pressed for time. It's always, too much to do and not enough time to do it. And so the only way that you get past that is to be able to become more efficient. And so even if it's just taking a second to like turn on that screen share before you do something and document how you do it, it's going to do 2 things. One, it's going to help you do it faster the next time and minimize errors if it's you doing it. And 2, if you're going to outsource that to someone else, then you're going to have a way to get that done the way you want it done and get the same outcome every time. So that really made a huge impression on me. And something that Sam says is that, the only difference between small struggling businesses and large successful ones is that documentation and process.
Interesting. So there's an example of content in and of itself being sort of a marker of success. But as you're talking, I'm wondering also about kind of jumping forward from that, like to measuring like the sort of more conventional ways that people measure, like content effectiveness or your return on investment or however you think about it. Do you work with your folks on that, and do you have a way? Is one of your part of your process to have a way to have a feedback loop about how well content is working for your folks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I track my content I have a master spreadsheet basically with all my content because again, content is an asset. And one of the main things I teach people up front is to think about it in that way because, I posted on Facebook the other day that struggling business owners will say the same thing 1,000 times, but don't have time to blog. So, at some point you have to flip the switch and understand that if you start to get things out of your brain and into a format where other people can consume it, that's how you can save time. That's how you can build authority. We literally say someone wrote the book on something. So publishing is what makes you an expert in other people's eyes. And so, yeah, tracking that. I use spreadsheets and I'll track, how engaged people were with that content. And, you can track things like opt-ins and things like that.
Right. And generally, I'm assuming because you have a lot of repeat business and people like you, that's working well, that people are getting good results.
Yeah. I mean, the ultimate is when people start to come to you and you don't have to sell them because they've already been through your content. They've been on a journey and they've convinced themselves that you are the answer to their problem. So that's kind of the ultimate goal for me with content is helping people reach that point of, oh yeah, okay, when I'm ready to do this, I know I need to call Kronda. I know I need to call Kim. I know, where you are just like the obvious choice because you've established that authority.
Right. And the way you just said that about, I forget exactly how you said it but that publishing is what establishes you as an authority. That to me is almost like the definition of content marketing. That's sort of the whole point of like sharing all this is that you put and like you said, it's not like you've literally written the book. You don't have a physical artifact to thud down on the desk, but maybe you do. I mean, some people do that. But can you tell me more about that? Like, so is that how you think of content marketing? Is that sort of the point of all of this authentic, genuine, figuring out how to get stuff out of your head and onto a web page or a social media post?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. But the other part of it is that, I really want to help people. And most of the people I work with really want to help people. And so there's a lot of people who can't afford to hire me, who are maybe earlier in their business. And content allows me to be able to help them help themselves, either reach their goals or get to the point where they can hire me or whatever it is. And so I don't have time to sit down and have coffee dates with people who, want to pick my brain about whatever it is, but I can share content that helps them get the same information on their own time and their own terms. And I literally have a post on my website called Coffee Dates and explains, here's why I'm not going to have coffee with you. But also here's a ton of resources for whatever it is that you're trying to find out.
No, that's great. I love that you put it that way because I think that is, I don't know, do you have a feel from watching the traffic on your side and just the interactions with folks over the year? Like, do you feel like you've helped 10 times as many, 100 times as many, 1,000 times as many people with the content on your site as you have as a consultant?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I haven't looked at my stats lately. I honestly spend more time creating content than digging in the weeds of Google Analytics. But for sure, I have. I mean, I've been out and about in Portland and had people come up to me and say, "Oh, hey, I watch your videos." So I'm definitely, great. Yeah, So I was like, "Oh, okay, business celebrity status." So I'm definitely helping more people by getting things online. And actually, one of my office mates this week called me. She said, "Oh, you're my new Wikipedia," and she called me Krondapedia. And it wasn't even about business. We were talking about biking and puppies. Oh. And I said, "Oh, go to my personal blog. I've got an article about staying warm in the winter while biking, and I've got tons of stuff about puppies because I just got a puppy." And she's like, "Oh, you're like Krondapedia." And I often tell people, if you have a question you think I know something about, Google my name, add your question, and you'll probably get something that I wrote.
Nice. Well, hey, I wonder, all of a sudden you got me wondering if we can do a little cherry picking right now. Do you have any favorite resources for content? Either for content, you mentioned the discovery process and how you do that. Like, do you have any tools that help in that part of the process?
Like for people wanting to kind of go through discovery on their own?
Yeah, I know there's a lot to that. That's kind of not the most focused question I've ever asked, but I guess just in general, like helping people with their content efforts. Are there tools, resources, things that you go back to all the time?
Yeah, I actually have. So I have like a member vault where I keep all my freebie content, and there is specifically a content creation framework in there that kind of gives you a framework for creating content that makes sure that it's useful, that it's specific, that you have a call to action, and can really help people with like have something besides the blank page, right? So that's something that's just in my vault that I offer. I have a ton of things on my blog around creating content. I did a video challenge last year where I created a video every day for 30 days. And that was, while life was happening, all these things were going on. I was finishing up creating an online course. I was traveling. And so you can go back and you can look at those videos. And of course, the last video was how to create content quickly. And all the videos are around 5 minutes or less.
Gotcha. Hey, I want to back up to something you just said about one of the resources. You said something in that discovery process about helping. Oh shoot, I can't remember exactly what it was, but you said something about helping people focus in their discovery efforts. And I'm just wondering. Oh, I know what it is. That there's earlier you talked about. A lot of this is just getting that conversational thing out of their head and into digital media, but that can be a little blabbermouthy, or not blabbermouthy, but like, how do you help people focus their, I know, because in getting back to what you said about intent, like there's a lot, sometimes you have to pare down all the things you're saying to get to the most essential and intentful thing. How do you help folks with that?
So that's something that comes with creating content as a habit instead of making it into this big thing. Like, okay, I got to do my monthly blog post and it has to be perfect and it has to say every little thing, versus if you're putting out, a blog post a month, but you're also posting on social media, or you're also doing a Facebook Live. Like when I create content, because if I think of an idea, I want to get it out into the world. And so I do that and I put it out into the world. So there's not so much pressure on trying to say all the things, because you can say something else tomorrow. You can say something else in an hour. When you normalize putting out content like that, it really just takes the pressure off so that you can actually have ideas and say what you need to say. And the other thing to realize is that coming up with ideas for content and creating content should really be two separate tasks. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. Like, it's different parts of your brain. And if you say, okay, I'm going to write an email once a week, and you sit down to write it, and you start by thinking of the idea, you've already lost. You need to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to think of, 50 email ideas and just have that in my bank and schedule those out, or have that where you can sit down and you can say, okay, which one of these ideas is resonating with me right now? So separating those tasks is a huge win.
Well, that's interesting. And again, we're getting back, I think we can't remember if we talked about this before a second ago, but like the difference between big organizations and a solopreneur who's doing stuff. It's like you'll have a whole separate, editorial planning and calendar process where you're generating ideas and you have sort of a pathway ahead of you. And you're saying that, like, for an individual, it's more about like, don't try to come up with the idea every week. Have that as a separate thing, and then you'll have like this bank of things to draw on.
Exactly. And I take my clients through a process where we come up with 100 ideas in about 2 hours.
Nice. Because that's a whole other thing. Hey, I just noticed we're coming up on time, Kronda. It's pretty far into this. I always like to give my folks a chance towards the end of the conversation. Is there anything anything I haven't asked you about, or that's just on your mind about content and content strategy lately that you'd like to share with our folks?
I think the most important thing is to do it. And there's a lot of, I presented at WordCamp Seattle, which is where we ran into each other. And a lot of people came up to me, were very complimentary afterwards. And I said, what's the most valuable thing that you took away? And she said, I'm going to organize my files. And that was like the most important thing that she took away from my talk, which is great because that's important. I said, well, what's been stopping you? And she said, well, I couldn't come up with the right folder names. This is digital files we're talking about, right?
Interesting.
I said, is this like a, stone tablet situation? Like you can't change them? And she had let this thing just like stop her from doing this thing for a year. And so if you take nothing else away from this, I would say like, lower the stakes for yourself and implement. The learning is in the doing, and the progress and the momentum are in the doing. And if you don't know or give a crap about SEO, and you just want to help people, you'll get a lot further than the person who is, spending an hour in Yoast trying to get every green light.
Right.
So, go out and help people and just do it and implement content and make it a habit and kind of normalize it for yourself. And I think the people who are out there doing that are the ones who are going to win.
Yeah, I love that, the way you said that, helping people and just being of service. People appreciate that, and they'll, and that. Well, thanks so much, Kronda. This has been a great conversation. I really enjoyed having you on.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed hearing Kronda's insights about her stealthy and resourceful approach to content strategy. In the next episode, I'll talk with Jennifer Bourne. Jennifer runs a small but very successful WordPress agency in Sacramento. I'm looking forward to learning from her more about how she helps her folks with their content. As always, I really appreciate it if you can leave your rating for this show at iTunes or your favorite podcast store.
Thank you for listening. If you can think of a friend who might enjoy this episode, please share it with them. And please join us again for our next content strategy interview.